I think we'll get, if everyone would like to be seated, we'll get started with the meeting.
28. No, I will. Okay. Not after the month you had over 2 years ago. Okay.
That's a big negative.
You want me to second it? I'll second it.
I think Paul's second, and I'm just trying to fill in Bob's spaces.
I think anybody can move it.
Right, I'll move it, that's fine, yeah.
And then somebody asks us a question, then we get up and give them the rationale for it.
Right.
That's all I would do.
Okay. Just doing my pen?
Probably. Do you need one? Yeah. Oh.
Thank you. It's just a second. I'm gonna move the transfer station. Ruben's gonna second.
Okay.
That's 32.
What you guys doing, 28?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robin Lane Douglas, and I am your moderator for the town of Alton. Before I begin, all those who are not registered voters of Alton, would you please rise? Okay. Thank you very much, and welcome.
Registered voters? No, non-registered.
You might as well stay up. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now declare the deliberative session of our 2022 annual meeting officially opened. Can everybody hear me okay? In the back? Let's meet our head table. To my left and your right is Attorney Stephen Whitley, Town Administrator Ryan Heath, Select Board Chairman Richard McDonald, who will introduce the Select Board.
We have Paul LaRochelle, Vice Chair, Brock Mitchell, and Reuben Wentworth. And Bob Holton will not be attending tonight.
And to my right, to the second to my right, is our town clerk, Lisa Noyes, who will introduce the town.
Deputy Town Clerk Jen Collins and Shannon Hart. She'll be taking the minutes tonight.
And beside them is Mr. Reuben Parker, who will introduce the Budget Committee.
Reuben Parker, Leanne LaPlante, and we have two members that aren't here.
Okay, I'm going to read the moderator's rules for this evening. The moderator will not follow Robert's rules. The moderator will use the following general rules of procedure, whose main purpose is to keep the meeting moving and not get bogged down in procedural quagmire. By majority vote, the voters can overrule any decision the moderator makes and any rule that the moderator establishes. A voter can raise such a request as a point of order. The moderator will take articles in the order that they appear on the warrant unless this body votes otherwise. After an article is read, a motion must be made and seconded prior to any discussion of the article. The names of those making and seconding the motion will be required. The moderator will then ask for someone to speak in favor of the article and then open the discussion to both pro and con. The moderator will allow only one motion on the floor at a time, with the exception of points of order. A motion to amend the pending article by the person who has the floor, or a motion to move the question by a person who has the floor. No one may speak unless they are recognized by the moderator and have the floor, with the exception of points of order. Everyone who speaks must use the microphone. Please start by stating your name. Be aware that the meeting may be videotaped for future replay. All amendments to a motion must be in writing. Motions to move the question limit debate and require a two-thirds vote. Non-voters of the town of Alton may not speak at the meeting without the permission of the voters, except the moderator will allow non-resident officials and consultants or experts who are here to provide information about an article to speak. All speakers must be courteous. The moderator will not allow personal attacks on any individual, town employee, elected official, or members of any town board or committee. Personal attacks include, but not limited to, statements of incompetency, illegal behavior, lack of knowledge, or violation of law. The moderator will not allow inappropriate language, such as swearing, cursing, or using offensive slang words attacking a person's race, gender, or religious affiliation. If anyone makes a personal attack or uses inappropriate language, they will be ruled out of order. If you are out of order, you will be warned once to cease. If you persist, you will be ruled out of order a second time, and you will then be asked to leave the building. If you refuse to leave the building, you will be assisted from the building by the police officer in attendance. All questions and comments should be addressed to the moderator. The moderator will choose who responds to the questions. With the exception of initial presentations on articles, which moderator requests are limited to 10 minutes, all speakers in debate will be limited to 3 minutes. Each speaker may only speak once until everyone has spoken. Voting will be done by a show of cards. If in the opinion of the moderator, the result is inconclusive, a standing vote will be taken. A secret ballot will be used when required by statute or when requested by 5 voters present here at the meeting during or at the end of debate on the article. A motion to reconsider may be made after a vote has been taken and may be made by someone who voted with the prevailing side. A motion to restrict reconsideration of an article may be made after a vote has been taken. You are hereby notified to meet at the Prospect Mountain High School on Tuesday, the 8th day of February in the year 2022, beginning at 6 o'clock in the evening for the purpose of deliberating upon the following warrant articles and the town elections to approve the warrant articles by ballot vote, which will be held on March 8th, 2022 at St. Catherine Drexel Church, the lower level, 40 Hidden Spring Road, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Article 1. To choose all necessary town offices for which there are vacancies for such terms as may be permitted by law, and to elect 2 selectmen for 3 years, 1 town clerk, tax collector for 2 years, 1 trustee of trust funds for 3 years, 2 library trustees for 3 years, 1 moderator for 2 years, 2 budget committee members for 3 years, 1 budget committee member for 2 years, 2 planning board members for 3 years, 1 planning board member for 1 year, 1 supervisor of the checklist for 6 years, and 2 zoning board members for 3 years. With that, we go on to Article 9, which I will read to you. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 and no cents to be added to the benefit pay expendable trust fund previously established in 2001. Said funds are recommended by the town auditors to be used to pay for benefits accrued by town employees and redeemed when they leave employment with the town of Alton, in accordance with the town personnel personnel policy. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
Good evening, folks. Thank you for attending tonight. This article goes into a regular capital reserve that we've had for quite a few years now. Right now, current balance on it, just to let you know, is $30,757. Also, want to let you know, we did have a few long-term employees retire this year, so the fund did go down. A lot of times, if they haven't used their sick time, vacation time, or earned time, this is what pays for it when they leave.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the article? Hearing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article Number 9. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds? Mr. McDonald? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 9, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 9 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 10, shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purpose set forth therein, totaling $8,691,586.00. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,434,833.00, which is the same as last year, with the exception of the water budget, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Board of Selectmen or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This article does not include special or individual articles addressed. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion?
I do. Reuben Parker.
Mr. Parker. Who seconds that?
I do. Leanne LaPlante.
Miss LaPointe?
Mrs. LaPlante.
Okay. Who wishes to speak to the article?
I will. This is Reuben Parker. The department heads did a really good job of pulling together a budget that, worked for the needs of their departments to support the needs of the town, while also considering the impact on the tax rate. It was a great process, very supportive group, so I thank the department heads. Similar to last year, as the total budget did come together, there was a determination that the overall budget was higher than we felt comfortable with from, again, the tax burden perspective. The town administration worked closely with the department heads and found basically cut a good chunk out of the net increase to the budget, giving us the budget that we have here tonight.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the article?
Lauren Carr, could the Budget Committee tell me how many new positions are in this budget?
I believe, and I'll ask Town Administrator to confirm, I believe there's two.
I can't quite hear him.
I believe there are two. Ask the Town Administrator to confirm that.
So I believe there's two in the fire department and a part-time position that was added to Parks and Recreation.
Two in the fire and two part-time?
No, one.
One part-time?
Yes. One part-time, one part-time.
And what would be the cost of these, those positions? Budget Committee have those numbers by any chance?
They're just not broken out.
Right, it's part of the overall total. The firefighters are $65,520 in wages. That's each.
Starts in June. Oh, no, that's the amount of money. That's only evidence. No.
I believe the additional laborer for grounds and maintenance was $38,480.
38,000, what was that?
480.
38,480.
Okay. I'd like to ask the Budget Committee if they believe they would be able to, the selectmen could get out $400 for a locked bulletin board up at the post office and replace the punch-out lock on the current lock bulletin board so that we don't have to have legally posted information on a general bulletin board hanging on an elastic band on a push pin between I buy junk and where is Fluffy the cat. It's pitiful. We're posting things on a general board on an elastic band. Does the Budget Committee think we have $400 that we could spend to solve that problem in that $8 million budget?
It's not up to the Budget Committee to spend.
But do we have the money to, if they can do it?
Point of order. All that can be amended here tonight.
State your name, please.
Sydney Shapley. All that can be done here tonight is to increase or decrease the budget. We can't say what it will be spent on. I think that's more of a question for a selectmen's meeting, more of a request for a selectmen's meeting.
I'm asking if they have enough money, if there's enough money for $400 in that budget to solve this problem. I'm not telling them to do it, I'm asking if there's money available.
That would probably, you'd have to go see a town administrator
But
when this is over.
But it's their budget. Is there enough money? Is there $400 extra money in the budget to solve that problem? That's all I'm asking.
I'm not aware that a line item includes that funding right now, but again, the actual spending of the budget is the selectmen's responsibility.
So you can't tell me whether we have extra $400?
He says, no, we can't.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on Article 10?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. John Markland. General question, I guess. I've had the fortunate experience of having enough time to watch the videos of the Budget Committee and selectmen at work during the budget season, so I appreciate trying to keep informed on everything. But when I look at it as a general voter, I'm looking at, so last year you asked the town to support an $8.2 million budget, which was approximately a 5% increase from the previous year. During your talking process, the numbers at the finality came to 9% increase this year, which the selectmen weren't in agreement with, so you reduced it down to 7% increase. And the way you did that was by cutting some things out of the budget, but you also paid some things forward from money that's been left over from this prior year, which kind of begs the question, similar to what Lauren was saying about $400. How do you talk to a voter and ask them to support an additional 7% increase when you're Obviously, you just expressed that you used money that wasn't spent from the 5% increase the year before to kind of pay off things ahead of time for the future year. And I guess that's my question. Where would you convince a voter to vote for the full budget versus the default budget when you kind of open the door, Pandora's box here?
Who'd like to address this question?
I don't know if that's clear, or does that make sense, or?
By paying off the leases. I can speak to it. You know, one of the things in particularly was employee retention and hiring. We did have monies left over because we had several positions within the town that we were unable to attract applicants for. Therefore, there was wage lines left, there was money left in overtime and you know, different payroll-related items at the end of the year because we weren't able to hire. Now, moving forward, we have to address hiring, staffing, and employee retention. So each department head had different plans within their departments to address those issues. That is one of the major items.
Okay. Do I have to wait for another spot to get another question?
Do you have another question? I'll let you ask a quick one. You still have a minute left on your time.
Oh, I do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My second question, the default budget. So you paid a lot of, not a lot, a couple of things forward for next year to lower the increase for this year's budget. How does that affect the default budget for this next year? In other words, I'll take, for instance, fireworks. You reduced it down to $1 to reduce the budget. So when the default budget comes out for next year, or for the following year, is that going to be $1 for the fireworks next year, or you're going to try to finagle a way to pay for it a year ahead, or?
No, budget.
I'm just using that as an example. There were a few items in here that were leveled down. I mean, IT, they asked for a certain amount of money and you reduced that. I was going to ask what was reduced, what was taken out, but...
There was no, at the end, that $200,000 reduction you're talking about didn't include anything from IT.
Sorry.
The fireworks were paid for because because of COVID-related issues. We didn't have some of our fireworks displays, and that's why that money was carried over to pay the contracts for the upcoming year and secure those positions with our fireworks vendor. IT we put on warrant article. Yeah, IT was the only thing they have that new warrant article. There's a proposal for I believe a CRF for IT future projects.
So, Mr. Markland, to answer your question, as Mr. Ryan just put it, where they lowered the fireworks down to $1 this year, if this budget passes, next year, if we go to the default budget, there'd be $1 in there for fireworks. I think that was the question you were referring to, similar.
In a general sense, yeah. And
yes, so anything that's been reduced to $1 budget this year, where the majority of the board reduced the budget a little, they moved it to $1 and this budget gets approved this year. Next year, if we go to the default budget, every one line item that got reduced to $1 will stay at $1. So there possibly could be no fireworks in 2023. Because we would only have $1.
And I'm just looking at the IT one that I was talking about. I was talking about hardware network, which was requested 11.5 and it was reduced down to 2,000. Software for DPW was 10.2 and was reduced to 3,200. So it was just kind of those items that I was looking at.
Those are
some of the big ticket items that I was looking at to say.
Those are all put into a warrant article now.
They're put into a warrant article.
Yes.
That's no taxation to the taxpayers? Is that the catchphrase again?
Mr. Markland, I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 10? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 10. Do that. Mr. McDonald, who seconds? Mr. Brock. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article number 10, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 10 is restricted from regarding reconsideration. Article 11, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $520,072.00 for the operation and maintenance of the water distribution system for the ensuing year. Said sum is to be offset by the user's fees. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $468,735.00, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Majority vote is required, is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who seconds the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. McDonald?
This is the amount they established during the budgeting process that is needed to operate the town's water department, that's offset by the users of the water department.
Is there any discussion on Article 11? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 11. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 11, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 11 is restricted from reconsideration. I think I had trouble with that word last year. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to establish an assessing department vehicle capital reserve fund under provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of replacing the pickup truck used by the assessing department, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,500.00 to be placed into this fund. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Selectmen 4-0 to 1, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion?
So moved, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion?
This is to provide a capital reserve fund for the eventual replacement of a vehicle used by the assessing and IT departments. Over time, it will generate less tax costs to save a small amount per year rather than appropriate an entire replacement cost in a single budget. Further, single budget appropriations run the risk of being denied, potentially leaving the assessing and IT departments without a necessary piece of equipment.
Is there any discussion on Article 12?
Lauren Carr. It's my understanding, maybe it's a different philosophy now, maybe Brock can help me on this. The idea of the capital reserve fund was so we would keep the tax rate steady, correct? We wouldn't have ups and downs. I don't understand why you're doing this. I guess that's my question. If the pickup truck costs $30,000, we've got an $8,691,583,000 budget. That comes up to be 1/3 of 1%. We're putting in a capital reserve fund to keep the tax rate level by putting in a reserve fund of 1/3 of 1%. How do you justify this? And we've got all of these articles tonight are all these reserve funds. I guess my question is, how is, having all of these, we're losing 7%. We have 7% inflation right now, correct? Correct. So you're having this money sit here, and we're losing 7%. We put it in a bank. We have to put it in a certain banks, and we get like 0.01% interest. We're losing money on these. Why would we possibly put in such a ridiculous amount in these reserve funds?
I believe I spoke on this in a meeting, that I agree with you on this. I don't believe that small amounts like this should be put in capital reserve, but this is my first time sitting here, and I move the article. I'm not 100% sure how to answer that for you, to be honest with you.
If we don't put money in these capital reserves, then we're going to end up, when we need a dump truck or something to pick up so something falls apart, and we've had it happen in town when we lost a few of the wheeler and the six-wheelers and stuff. We had the money in the capital reserves instead of coming up with $200,000-300,000. We had been putting money aside and that covered it. If we don't do it, then you're going to end up with, either we're going to end up with the trucks breaking down and we can't fix them, or we end up with a spike in your taxes trying to replace it.
This is for pickup trucks for the town assessor and for the
Yeah, we started
appraiser.
for all the equipment.
Most it's going to be is $30,000. It's not 200 what you're talking about. Can I ask the attorney, if I zero this out, is it still establish a capital reserve fund if it's zero?
If you zero out the appropriation and this passed, the fund would still be set up, but there'd be no money put in the fund.
I don't see how this is, Madam Moderator, how, I don't understand how this is an idea of a capital reserve fund for such a small amount, a third of 1% of our current budget. We're going to have 1,000 of these reserve funds if you keep doing this. We can't withdraw this motion either. Can they withdraw this motion? I ask the attorney?
Yes.
Can you repeat your question, just to make sure I heard it?
Can the selectmen withdraw this motion tonight?
No, because everything's got to go on the ballot.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Article 12?
Sidney Shapley. I just wondered which selectman voted against this.
There was one selectman that was absent.
Oh, okay, thank you.
401, yes.
Any other discussion on Article 12? Hearing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 12. Do I get it? Mr. McDonald. May I get a second? Mr. Wentworth. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article number 12, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Okay. Article 12 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 13. To see if the town will vote to establish a building department vehicle capital reserve fund under provisions of RSA:35:1 for the purpose of replacing the pickup truck used by the building department, and to raise and appropriate the amount of $3,500.00 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Excuse me, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion?
I do.
Mr. Mitchell, who seconds the motion?
I do.
Mr. LaRochelle, who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
To provide the town with the ability to appropriate the funds necessary to replace the vehicle over approximately 10 years, as opposed to appropriating the total amount in a single year, minimizing the burden on the taxpayers. The present truck was purchased in 2018 for $25,000. The amount requested is in anticipation of inflation over the next 10 years.
Is there any discussion on Article Seeing none, I'll take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 13. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 13, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 13 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Excuse me. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to clarify the purpose of the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund previously created in 1973 as being used for the purchase of all types of fire department apparatus, equipment on apparatus, equipment used by fire employees in the operation of all apparatus at emergency scenes, and repairs of apparatus and equipment. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Two-third vote is required, recommended by the Selectmen, 5-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
Evening, folks. A former selectman and citizen this year came to us with this Fire Department Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. The clarification of this, in 1973, it was set up as a fire engine fund. Over the years, the town of Alton, and nobody really defines who it is yet, whether it's trustees of the trust funds or the Board of Selectmen, started changing these funds to capital reserve funds. According to DRA, we have to do some housekeeping here, and that's why we're asking you tonight to clarify this equipment reserve fund from the fire truck fund that was in 1973, so that way that we can move on further. There possibly is some other capital reserve funds, but we are looking into that now to make sure they were done the right and proper way.
Is there any discussion on Article 14? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't understand the language. It says to see if the town will vote to clarify the purpose of the Capital Reserve Fire Department. Okay, it says as being used for the purpose. Why is that the past tense? Shouldn't that to be used for the purchase? Isn't this something you want to do in the future, to use this money to spend on equipment, just not the fire truck?
It's more than just fire equipment. It's all equipment, but this went before legal counsel and DRA, and they both approved the wording of it. And I believe the Board of Selectmen spent one night, an hour, discussing how it should be rewritten and presented to DRA and legal counsel.
But you see, Madam Moderator, look, as being used. They're not talking about the past. It's saying that's how we used it in the past. It's to be used. You see what I mean, Madam Moderator?
I see what you're saying. I'm rereading this.
But it has been being used as that.
I know, but in the future, you want to buy equipment, correct?
Correct, and this will allow us to do that.
So it should be to be used.
This will allow us to do that.
When you say as being used, you're saying in the past. Something's not right there. And the other thing I don't quite understand, why does it say apparatus, equipment on apparatus, equipment used by fire employees in the operation of apparatus? Why?
Mr. Carr,
Yeah.
may I suggest you write out an amendment for me?
Okay.
And we will take a vote to change that verbiage?
For the 2B?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. All right. And I don't understand why they didn't just put in apparatus and equipment. I don't know why it's equipment on apparatus and equipment on apparatus being operated. I don't understand why all that confusion, but
Do you need to,
I think your goal is to in the future, so I would think it would have to be 2B.
Moderator. So basically, it was to put any words in there that somebody couldn't come back and say the selectmen can't spend that money on this piece of equipment because it wasn't really listed. So this is the way it was written. Like I said, approved by legal counsel and approved by DRA.
Well,
Would you like to write out
I
an
don't think it's going to
amendment?
be all legal lawyers are going to be voting on this, so maybe we can make it for the layman to understand it. So, yes, I'll make that motion, but also I will make a motion. I'm going to change that to be, and I also want to put at the end where it says, to name the Board of Selectmen as agent to expend from said funds no more than $100,000 per year.
Okay, you already have that in writing? Thank you. Whoops, let me, come on.
I think I got it.
Oh, you got longer arms than I do. Thank you.
No, we can't vote for it, because that would tie the hydrants to the fire department.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading it too. He wrote to be, and then he wants it right there. This, no more than. Okay, so I'm going to read it.
My 2 cents would be out of I don't believe it's legal. I don't think there's any authority to put a limitation on an agent to expend. You either can name them as agents to expend, or you don't have agents to expend. But adding a limitation in there, I don't believe is permissible. But this other one is totally fine.
Okay, I've just been told that we can't put a limitation on what the agents can spend. So the no more than $100,000 per year it's not a legal verbiage when you assign an agent to trust in that money.
All right, then, I'll amend my amendment.
Do you want me to just line that up for you, or?
Just cross out the whole thing about the...
Okay, just in... Okay, so we're going to leave in that to be. Okay, Mr. Carr has made a motion to amend Article 14 to read, I'm going to start with the fire truck fund established in 1973 to be used for the purchase of all types of fire department apparatus. Who who seconds that motion? And you are? I'm sorry. Oh,
Right.
Mr. Howard, correct? Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment? Would anybody like to speak to that?
I will.
All in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards.
Well, don't I get to say what my ideas are behind the amendment?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so all we did was cut out the line that said, to name the Board of Selectmen as agent to expend from said funds, the last line, correct?
That's all we took out, correct? I'll read the...
No.
What?
Took out the $100,000.
Took out.
We took out no more than $100,000.
Right, but they're still named as agents to expend. That's still in there.
Right,
Okay, so you said I can't make that one. So
Right.
I'd like to revise that one. Because you said I can't make it, correct?
So just to clarify, you want to remove the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend?
Correct.
Okay, I think we misunderstood
Yes.
what your amendment was.
Yeah.
You can do that if you'd like to.
I got arms. Let me do it.
All right. Let me come around.
Have to go back to town meeting. No, budget committee couldn't.
Okay, you can do that. Okay, I'm going to read read the whole amendment so everybody understands how it's going to be placed on the warrant if this passes. To see if the town will vote to clarify the purpose of the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, previously referred to as the Fire Truck Fund, established in 1973, to be used for the purchase of all types of fire department apparatus, equipment on apparatus, equipment used by fire employees in the operation of all apparatus at emergency scenes, and repairs of apparatus and equipment. Two-thirds vote is required, recommended by the selectmen 5-0. We have taken out the sentence, further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund.
And,
That is removed.
and you've got to remove our vote, too. You've changed the article, it ain't our vote anymore.
And you get a chance.
Is there any discussion on this amendment?
Can I speak?
Yes, yes.
Virgil McDonald, by doing this, if we lose a piece of equipment, we are not going to be able to replace that piece of equipment until the following March.
No, that's not correct.
Of course it is. We can hold a special town meeting for the...
That's right. We're gonna have a
Not for these.
special
It doesn't
town
say that. We can only hold a special town meeting for Article 10, for the budget. None of these say that we can hold a special town meeting to vote on a fire truck.
I'm not going to argue with them, Madam Moderator. You've told me not to do that before in the meetings. I'm not going to argue with them.
We have to, it has to be put in there to hold a special meeting. And then you're looking, when the truck goes down, instead of us replacing it, or a 10-wheeler or anything in the middle of the winter, if that truck goes down and we can't replace it, it's going to be until election time probably by the time, or it's going to be months out before we can get it replaced or get something in there, because we won't be able to expend to get things fixed. I'm all set.
Ms. Shapley.
Thank you, Sydney Shapley. Who does Mr. Carr want to have the ability to be the agents to expend?
Well, that would, where'd you go?
It doesn't have to be in the operating budget. It doesn't have to be.
I can't quite hear you, Sid.
Who do you want to have the ability to expend?
This would have to wait till the next annual meeting,
No,
or if I'm correct, it's a special town meeting, correct?
that's correct.
Yes,
It would
that's
be
correct.
a special town meeting.
Okay. I know from my time serving as a selectman, a special town meeting, and from my time on the school board, will cost the taxpayers approximately $10,000. Not sure that's the best use of our money. In addition to shortchanging safety for wordsmithing of an article, I hope people will vote this amendment down.
Can I
Any
speak
other
for the motion?
discussion? I have somebody over here.
I haven't spoken for the motion yet. My motion.
Go ahead, speak to your motion.
Okay, I'm concerned that the taxpayers won't have a say in spending if the article of the $450,000, the next article passes. It is going to be $1,346,205 in that account.
Well, the taxpayers would have their say because they can vote down Article 14 at the
If
polls.
the way it is currently written, if 3 selectmen decide to spend $1,300,000, it will be bought. There will be no say for the people to say yea or nay. I think that's too large a sum of money to be resting on one vote.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to put the $100,000 so they could do the equipment if there's a problem. But for $1.3 million to be spent by one vote, I can't go along with that.
No,
We had a... Wait.
Go ahead.
There is a method. If the truck goes down, we can have a special meeting. We can ask for special emergency meeting. I'm sure the judge would grant it if we needed a fire truck, if we couldn't rent one or some other issue. It's too much money to be on one vote. The fire vote last year passed by one vote. The townspeople did not vote on that fire vote. And after it was voted, 3 selectmen voted for it. A week later, one of the selectmen said, "I wish I hadn't voted for it." This is too much money to not have the voters have a say in it. $1.3 million is going to be in that account. That's why I put in front. I'm not picking on the fire department.
We're going to go on to the next person to discuss.
Jim Baldwin, Fire Chief. Without the selectmen being agents to expend, that could put us behind. If we need a repair, it needs to happen. Waiting for a special town meeting will put us behind even more. As far as how much money is going to be in there is a lot of money coming out of there in the next few years. All of our trucks are almost the same age. It's going to take some time to catch up, and we have a lot of money to spend in the next few years. Yes, that account is going to be high, but there's over $2.5 million that's going to be coming out of it in the next 8 years. That's why there's so much in there. It is a savings account, and it's made so that the day we need that truck, we can get the best deal on it, cash in hand, and just buy it. But we do need the selectmen to be able to spend that money, or we'll just stay behind.
Thank you. To this side.
Kelly Sullivan. If you're that concerned about this particular article passing by one vote, why didn't we amend the article to be a 3-3 vote instead of all the hoopla? And I know that Mr. Carr stated he's not picking on the fire department, and I would hope not. We are always place high priority of our seniors in this town, which I 110% agree with. Absolutely should take care of our seniors. In that respect, we need to have those services available for them. We rely on mutual aid a lot more than we should. Mutual aid is not something that's supposed to be like, in case you need it, not an everyday occurrence, I wouldn't think. And if we are relying on mutual aid, then we should be putting some money aside for these purchases that we need. To my knowledge, and I don't know everything, I'm not on the budget committee, and no, I don't follow every day, but the fire department, yes, they got a fire truck and they got the boat, but it's not like they're out every day purchasing things anyway. So to the chief's point, this happens to be their year. We've had the same thing happen with the highway department and other departments that need large figures to operate within their means because of said equipment or things like that. So just to take that into consideration.
Thank you. Who's next?
Raymond Howard. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. This is a very confusing article because it kind of conflicts with Article 15. So Article 14, it needs a 2/3 majority vote to pass. So if it doesn't reach that and it doesn't pass, how's that going to affect Article 15 where we're putting more money into a capital reserve fund that you're trying to change now, which will end up being defaulted back to the way it was?
Well, this is, Article 14, I believe, is to clean up what it's being expended for. There's no money.
Exactly, but if it doesn't get cleaned up, then Article 15 is putting money into that Article 14.
It means the money's going to go into the fund as it currently exists.
So they'll be in the same situation where the fund's only allowed for the purchase of a fire truck. That's what you're trying to correct here, right?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
I think more work should have been done on these two articles.
That's the fire department.
No, the point was is that when it was established in the 70s, that it was stated to be a fire truck fund, but there was no CRS back then. The capital reserves, they didn't exist in the budgeting system. Over time, when the budgeting rules and regulations changed and CRS came into existence, at some point, I know that Selectman Wentworth had mentioned that we weren't really able to track where it transitioned over. But when it transitioned over into a capital reserve, the town has been putting money into it for many years now, as it exists. The question was raised by a taxpayer at a meeting as to when the purpose changed over the years, and there was some discrepancy with that. So we went back just to clarify the purpose, is what it is. But the fund itself still existed, it had pre-existing funds.
Exactly, but if you don't clarify, if you don't change it, the purpose will still be as it was set in 73, because you don't have the consent of the voters. That's all, I'm just saying, there's confusion, and you have a high standard to meet to get this 14 passed.
Thank you. Mr. Wentworth?
Madam Moderator, I'm speaking as a resident now and also just past knowledge of being a selectman for 17 years. This is a bad amendment to this article. Last year, if you folks remember, there was an article to buy a fire truck, put money away. It was over $1 million. It got defeated. We did find a used ladder truck that we were able to put back into service in this community that the fire chief and his deputies all found. They went down and looked at it. The fire department we got it from, I believe it was Pennsylvania, if the chief could correct me on that. It was a great piece of equipment. That fire department was sad to see it go, but we got it for a lot less money. If we did not have the capability of using the fire department capital reserve fund, we would never been able to replace a ladder truck for our community. Would have had to rely on other communities to come in and service us, because the ladder truck we had was put out of service. The brakes were no good, and I think some of you can probably remember in the news how different trucks in the city of Boston was going in buildings because their brakes were no good and they couldn't replace them. That was one of those trucks that had a brake problem. We put thousands of dollars into an old ladder truck, the turntable, everything. Once those pieces of equipment go down, it's very easy to spend $50,000. If you want to call a special town meeting, which could happen several times a year because of all the equipment we have, go with Mr. Loring's amendment. But I ask you respectfully, after being here for 17 years as selectmen, as agents to expend, I have never seen us do anything foolishly with your dollars. Thank you.
Kelly Sullivan.
One second, Mr. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I meant to say when I was up earlier that if this amendment passed through the board and the DRA and also legally, then I don't see a problem with this amendment, and I would hope that it would pass.
Mr. Whitley?
I just wanted to note for the benefit of the meeting how it works when you want to call a special town meeting. There's two ways and it can be done. You either have to go to Superior Court and file a petition and establish that you have some emergency expenditure that you need to make and need to go back to the voters to get that money. Emergency is pretty narrowly defined in that statute. So I frankly don't know if the sort of hypothetical we're talking about, if a judge would agree that that is in fact an emergency. The other way that you can do it is that you need 1/2 of the voters to show up and vote at the special town meeting. I don't know what your voter attendance is like here in town.
As you can see.
So I don't know if that is a viable sort of outcome to rely upon, but those are the two ways that special town meetings can be called.
Mr. Carr?
Well, I'd like to clarify, the DRA doesn't decide about that it's okay to have the selectmen as agents or not. They just, the wording, so that's not true. But I still come back to the point, tomorrow, if it passes, the selectmen can vote to buy a new fire truck the next day. We're going to pay, next couple articles down, we're going to pay off a fire truck. The next day, they can decide, well, let's buy another fire truck. I respect Mr. Wentworth's opinion, but I don't agree with him. I don't think the fireboat was handled correctly last year. Never came before the voters. That's kind of what's brought up my concerns about this, is that the voters should have a say if we're going to able to spend up to $1.3 million. I wish the $100,000 that they could spend on equipment could pass. As I said, okay, if there's a problem, they would be able to spend $100,000. I wish that was the ability, but to weigh that the voters are not going to get a say in spending that amount of money scares me. And if all this problem, perhaps next year, to address this, you could put a reserve fund like we have in the highway department for equipment, a different one, up to $100,000. So, and I also want to say is, we did buy, the voters said no on the truck, and we ended up with a good ladder truck for $75,000. So a little bit of scratching, and we found something to save a lot of taxpayers' money. Could you speak up to the microphone, please? I can't hear you.
I'm relatively new, so I didn't know if there was a time limit to discussing each article, because, just curious.
Each person gets 3 minutes to speak, and I have a timer going here. That's that boop, boop, boop you keep hearing.
But for each article, there's no time for each article?
You can speak twice to each article, 3 minutes a turn.
Felice Carr. I just had two questions. One, the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund was established when?
1973.
I know the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve, the Fire Truck Fund was established in 1973. Was the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund established after that?
Yes.
Yeah, but we're not sure when, because it's just kind of changed.
You don't know when? So it was established at one point?
Yeah, well, the name of the accounts were changed. They kind of feathered into Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve.
Okay, so it never came before the voters, though?
No.
It was just assumed or
just
wording? Okay, so
years
it actually is, right now, it is the Fire Truck Fund, and you want to change it so that it's the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, how much is in the Fire Truck Fund, which was established in 1973 now?
$896,200.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
$896,206 right now sits in the fund.
Okay, $896,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Madam Moderator?
Yes, sir.
Can I just add one more thing to this?
Yes.
If there's somebody else?
Yeah.
The only thing I'd like to say is the Board of Selectmen, Capital Improvements Committee, and Budget Committee talk about all these expenditures at every budget session. The department heads go to the CIP committee and present what is needed over the next 10 to 15 years, as the chief has stated what's coming up. The Capital Improvements Committee also holds a public hearing on all the equipment that the department heads and what their needs and wants are for the next 10 to 12 12 years. Anybody from the public is welcome to attend. Unfortunately, we don't get much from the public. After that, it does come to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee goes through everything the CIP wanted, they recommend or not. That is still open to the public at a public hearing and all their meetings. The Board of Selectmen, when they resume...
I think we're staring away from...
Well, I'm just saying, we don't just not meet with the public. We do meet with the public.
Thank you. All right. Does everyone understand the amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards. All those opposed? The amendment fails. Okay, now we're back to Article 14. Is there any other further discussion on Article 14? You've been up quite a few times now.
Does that cut out the 2B? Yes.
Yes.
Heck with it.
All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article number 14, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 14 is restricted from reconsideration. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't take a motion to restrict. Who, may I get a motion to restrict? That would be Mr. McDonald, I'm very sorry. And who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. And the vote still stands. And there's your amendment proposal. Article 15. All in favor of restricting reconsideration? We've already voted on this. All those opposed? Article 14 is restricted from reconsideration. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $450,000 to be added to the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1973. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds the motion? Mr. Mitchell. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
Folks, as we just learned from the past article, this article is also to go on for future needs of the Alton Fire Department, to replace equipment and to replace apparatus. Just to let you know, last year the Board of Selectmen did go into an agreement on a fire boat, which half of it has been paid for. In June, when we take delivery of it, another half has to be paid on delivery, which is $175,500. So if this money is approved at town meeting, the balance will be left at that point, $1,170,706. So the 1.3 wasn't quite accurate.
Is there any discussion on Article 15?
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
I want to add, after established in 1973, current balance in this account is $896,205.
206.
Okay, we have a motion to amend Article 15, and it would happen after established in 1973. Current balance in this account is $896,205. Do I have a second for the amendment? Mr. Howard. Is there a discussion on the amendment?
I'd just like the voters to know how much is in the account.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment?
I rounded it up.
Gene Young. I have a paper here I picked up out back, and it says that the current balance is $895,822, and Mr. Carr has a different number. I just wonder why that is.
Who can speak to that?
896,205.
I don't know what form he's looking at.
Which form are you looking at,
Madam
sir?
Moderator? Madam Moderator? Gene, Ms. Young, what we have in front of us, 2021 capital reserve balances, it would be $896,205.64. I rounded it up, I'm sorry, to 206. That's what was in the ending balance of 12/31. This is still subject to the auditors coming in next month, I believe. Asked Laura that earlier today. So as of the 31st, that's what we had. But there could have been bills that came in January up to the 14th that had been paid out of that, which I'm not sure of right tonight. So you might have more of a current sheet than I have. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Richard Shea. I hadn't thought much about it before, but Mr. Carr's amendment asking that the current balance in capital reserve accounts be included in the motions, or perhaps as a notation afterwards, I think is very beneficial. It'll allow the taxpayers to exercise a more proper judgment on what it is they're voting for. And in cases where there's a specific end target, such as a specific purchase, perhaps that information could be included as well. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor, I'm going to read the amendment so we all know we're clear. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $450,000 and no cents to be added to the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1973. The current balance in this account is $896,205. Majority vote required. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards. All those opposed? I think we're going to need to have a standing count. Could I get those that are in favor of the amendment to please stand and wait? We're going to have our counters up there. I'm sorry. Have you got that count? 14. 14. All those opposed, please rise. Oh, I think we got. I do. 17. The amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on Article 15? Seeing none?
We're not got one.
Oh, I'm very sorry, I didn't see you coming.
Jim Bodwin, Fire Chief. We've talked about this a little bit, but I just want to make it clear. Yes, we're asking for $450,000 to capital reserve. This money, or this number, comes from CIP. They obviously worked very hard with the entire plan to try to keep the impact to the taxpayers as close to $1 per thousand as they can. And that takes all departments into account, not just the fire department. Everybody goes into account to make that happen. Yes, you're gonna see over $1 million in that account. But this year, $220,000 is coming out. And then between 2024 and 2026, there's another really $2.6 million coming out. And then in 28, which is beyond what's on your sheet, there's another just over $700,000 coming out. So yes, they are big numbers, but unfortunately fire equipment is very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, I'm glad we brought up the CIP because I've got some questions about that. The CIP 2020-25 plan had in 2020 $150,000 we were supposed to raise, then 200,000, 21, 22, 200, 23, 200, 24, 250,000, and 25 was 250,000. Now we jumped to the 2022-27, and the 2022 went from 200 to 450,000, over 200, double the amount on that CIP. And then now every year they're asking for $450,000 for the next 5 years. So in 2 years, they estimated from $200,000 to $450,000. So I'm a little confused how we can have a 5-year plan that doubles after 2 years. You just discussed it, so that's another one of my concerns. I wonder if anybody can address that. Maybe the Budget Committee, you said there was public hearings, the Budget Committee. Can they tell me how they think that came about?
I mean, I can speak to it. I was new to the CIP this year and learned that the process, and I think it was described a little bit, is to look at the needs of each department in the future and try to even that out in terms of the budget impact each year. So the forecasted amount could change in terms of the amount of the warrant article to support the funding. The net purchases are, it's not in direct conflict with what's trying to be purchased. It's just trying to figure out how do we get enough money in that balance to make the purchases when they're needed.
But in 2 years, it doubles, more than doubles?
Your CIP right there. Half CIP.
I believe this gentleman can answer your question.
So I'm going to address you, Mr. Moderator. Having sat on the CIP committee, I am...
Wait, point of order. Point of order. CIP is made up of planning board members.
No.
Yes, it is. RSA, it's planning board members. Or you can make it up of another individuals, they're elected officials. And the town put it in as planning board members. They have a committee, a subcommittee, but they're not CIP. They're a subcommittee, volunteers. Thank you.
Having sat on the volunteer committee that reports to the planning board, the discrepancy that Mr. Carr is noting in this case was the lack of account for the aerial ladder truck in, I believe it's line 1. I don't have my CIP chart with me. It's in the back. The aerial ladder truck was not included in CIP for several years because there was a lot of outside funding funding that was being pursued, for instance, grants. It was also on the ballot one year for a lease purchase. And because all of those avenues were being pursued, it never went into CIP. In the past few years, after we exhausted those avenues, the ladder truck was put into CIP. I can only assume that the topic will come up of the used truck that we purchased. That used truck was specifically purchased to get us through the next 5 years as we save to make that purchase. Thank you.
10 years. Mr. Carr, you have 20 seconds left on your time.
20 seconds left.
Yes, sir.
I think part of this is because the CIP went from a 25-year cycle that we have had for years upon years, and if they looked in the Fire Truck Association Fund, white paper, that they will see that that was a mistake. The Fire Apparatus Duty Cycle White Paper, page 6, said it can go from 20 to 40 years, depends on the usage. So 25 was a reasonable number. They broke it down to 20 years, so that's up the numbers a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. I will, who cares to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 15? Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 15, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 15 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $399,195 for the purpose of paying off the existing lease on the pumper fire truck. Said funds that have come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from the general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who cares to speak? Mr. La Rochelle.
This is to pay off the balance of the existing Engine 4 lease. This payoff will be 6 years early and saving the town about $50,000 in interest alone. This will remove the yearly payment from our operating budget. In my opinion, this is a smart move to pay off the truck early and to save on the interest in the future.
Is there any discussion on Article 16?
Mr. La Rochelle, tell me how old the truck is.
How old the truck is? I'm not really sure how old the truck is. I'd refer that to the chief, the fire chief. He's right behind you.
He's behind you.
Engine 4 is a 2019.
Mr. Rochelle, tell me, when was this supposed to be replaced in the CIP? When was it scheduled?
Within 10 years, I believe.
Oh, you know what year it was supposed to be replaced?
Engine 4, I'd have to look that up. That would be in 2032. Is that correct?
2032?
Or that'd be in 10 years, right?
No.
Chief?
Don't know, okay.
So the truck was ordered in 2018. It's scheduled to be replaced 20 years later, which would be 2038.
2038, okay. Thank you.
So it is, so we are going to replace this in 2038, correct? It's not going to be jumped up because we've already paid it off. Why aren't we paying this off with the $896,205 we have in the reserve fund now?
Because we're looking at a ladder truck and stuff coming out right up.
Part of the reason to that as well is that during the board meetings, the board was looking to pay down the burden on the taxpayers with the unassigned fund balance, and the recommendation was to pay down one-time warrant articles instead of putting it onto the operating budget where we would have to then recoup that money each year, and it would create big peaks in the operating budget. When we pay down one-time warrant articles like this, it won't create the big peaks in the tax rate in the operating budget.
But we have money in a reserve fund. Why don't we buy that? Why don't we pay off that motor out of that reserve fund? We have almost $900,000. Why don't we pay off the $400,000 instead of raising more money? When we're losing 7% a year inflation, so why don't we pay off that instead of raising more money?
Chief?
I'll let you answer that real quick, but then your 3 minutes are...
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Yes.
So engine 4 was one that was missed in CIP originally. Okay. There was no money actually allotted to pay that truck off or buy that truck in CIP. That truck, that's why it was leased in the first place. CIP got back on track, and we're trying to avoid leases. There's no way to pay this off out of the CIP that we have, or the capital reserve fund rather that we have, because that money is all spoken for future purchases.
Thank you.
Kelly Sullivan. I think the chief has been up at least twice and explained all of the future payments we'd have to make out of that capital reserve fund. So I appreciate that you went and found a savings of around about $50,000 in paying this lease off early. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick O'Brien, Frank C. Gilman Highway, also again in reference to the volunteer group appointed by the CIP committee, or I'm sorry, by the planning board. This CIP packet is actually a phenomenal document, and the answer to Mr. Carr's question can be found on page 3 of 12. And in the bottom line, balance of fire department CRF, it will show you that in year 2026, the balance in that account is only $266,000. So if in fact this money was to be pulled from there, it would be in the negative, and also would leave no reserve for any repairs or other things that could.
Thank you. Seeing no more discussion, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 16. Mr. LaRochelle, who seconds that? Mr. McDonald? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article number 16, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 16 is restricted from reconsideration. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $20,000 to be added to the Grounds and Maintenance Vehicle Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2019. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Oh, Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Oh, Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry.
I see you around.
I'm sorry. The funds would be used to purchase replacement vehicles and equipment when needed to perform general maintenance of the town properties and buildings, plowing, mowing, trash removal at all town buildings and public parks, turf management, and custodial care of the town buildings. The fund currently has a balance of $20,767. The grounds maintenance department is expected to replace a 2015 F-250 pickup truck in 2025 with a similar vehicle for approximately $40,000. Future purchases will include a replacement vehicle for the 2008 Dodge Caravan, which is the transportation for the town custodian.
Is there any discussion on Article 17?
Yes, Richard Shea. I just want to say I appreciate the presentation that was just made that tells me the amount that's being requested, the amount that's now in the fund, its intended purpose, and how it will be spent. That's what I'd like to see, once again, on all of these capital reserve funds. Thank you.
Any other discussion on Article 17? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 17. Mr. Wentworth, second. Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 17, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 17 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 18. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $150,000 to be added to the Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1981. Majority vote required, recommended by the Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion?
So moved, Ms. Moderator.
Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds the motion?
I do.
Mr. LaRochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
These funds would fund the CIP Plan 2022, the Highway Department planned replacements of the frontline fleet vehicles with a 1-ton pickup, utility body and plow, and a 19.5 GVW truck with plows. These would replace a 2016 2500 Dodge pickup with a plow. The vehicle would then be reassigned with the Public Works Division, i.e. Cemeteries Division. Number 2, a 2002 Ford F-550 utility body with plow. This vehicle would be decommissioned. Number 3, the replacement of a 2001 30-ton trailer. The old trailer would be decommissioned. These vehicle replacements will allow for the department to upgrade the 2 20-plus-year-old pieces of equipment and reassign a 7-year-old vehicle to a lighter duty in order to gain additional life cycle years.
Is there any discussion on Article 18? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 18. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 18, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 18 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,165,994 to be added to the Highway Reconstruction Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1998. Said amount is partially offset by an estimated $190,000 from the Highway Block Grant. The remainder will be raised through taxation. This is an annual appropriation that provides for the reconstruction of existing roadways. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
The following will address 80% funding for pavement preservation, 71 miles paved, 375,306 lineal feet, at $21.25 per lineal foot, cost divided by a 7-year treatment cycle, equal to $1,139,321, and 20% funding for the road rehabilitation, reclaim, drainage, and repaving, $375,000. Right now, in the road reconstruction fund is $406,652. Roads that are suggested for overlay this year is Tom Road, Linwood Drive, Valley Road, Range Road, shim 1-inch and overlay of 1-inch, Halls Road, 7,000 feet, Avery Hill Road, 14,700 feet, Powder Mill Road, Stockbridge Corner Road. Shim 1-inch asphalt rubber chip seal would be Fort Point Wood Road, Southview Lane, Sydney Court, Person Road. And road rehabilitation of 5,311 feet, reclaim, under drain, open drainage, ditching, culvert replacement, base, top, course paving. Culvert replacement, basin inlet, Roberts Cove Road, 2020 section, top course.
Is there any discussion on Article 19?
Richard Shea. This is my favorite annual appropriation item. As a resident of Roberts Cove Road, I'm about third-year resident of Alton, and I know, as best I understand, that the last 10 years or so, we've had a flat appropriation of $950,000 for a road repair and upgrade. We had 1 year where that was voted down, and this is the first year that we've seen an increase, which I think is badly needed and somewhat overdue. I was glad to hear my street, Robert Cove Road, which is in need of major repairs, mentioned, although I'm not sure it was clear to me that the portion that has not had any work done on it is on the list that Ruben read. I hope that it is. It's a dangerous situation that we have right now. I applaud our new highway or public works manager for reaching out for additional funds in a year when that certainly is not going to be popular. But I think anyone that drives around various side streets in Alton has to agree that it's justified and badly needed. Thank you.
Also a resident of Roberts Cove Road, and appreciate
May I have
the
your
fact
name,
that-
please?
I'm sorry, Greg Swenson.
Thank you.
And appreciate the fact that we saw an awful lot of road reconstruction this last year, especially. It was really very good, much appreciated, but much needed also. But another piece of Roberts Cove, and I'm glad to see that that's on the agenda here to be done. It was started 3 years ago. Half of it's done. The other half needed to be done. And for a variety of reasons, water runoff and all of those kinds of things. But also, at the bottom of the hill, there is a beach. And the traffic that goes down that road from the blinking light down Roberts Cove to that public beach with new road construction, and I'm all for the new road construction, but also for good signage. It's a dangerous situation down there. I've been there many times and seen a couple of people almost hit because of the speed. So however the road is done, it needs to include signage and some way to warn people going down that hill, which will be increased speed going down there with kids crossing where the snowmobile path goes across and the public beach is there. Roberts Cove Marina is there right next to it with boats coming in and out, cars coming in and out, all kinds of people around at that place, and you can't see it going down there. So I appreciate the fact that this is being included in the budget. Certainly much needed. I've driven that road and lived down there since 1992, and I've seen a lot of cars go up and down. So this is a much appreciated thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 19. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration for Article 19, please raise your cards. You guys are all beating me. All those opposed? Article 19 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the bridge construction capital reserve fund as previously established in 1995. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of that? Mr. Wentworth.
These funds will assist in bridge construction with projects within the town. The capital reserve account was utilized in 2021 for the replacement of Loon Cove red-listed bridge. $252,000, which was the approximate cost to replace the bridge there, left us roughly with $4,798.49. It was nice to have this money in there because originally the Board of Selectmen was waiting for the state of New Hampshire to come up with their money from the bridge, and we were going to have to wait 10 to 11 years. We were able to have this money, and the new Public Works Director we have, Scott Kimmin, came in with a company, and we went out to bid several companies and came in with a much lower cost replacement on this than going through the state of New Hampshire, which had a lot more red tape to it. So we do ask you folks to go ahead and vote on this again this year to help us with continuing projects like this.
Is there any discussion on Article 20? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration. That will be Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 20 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 21. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be added to the Highway Building Improvements / Repairs Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2014. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves this motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. La Rochelle.
These funds will be added to the Capital Reserve Fund for future improvements to the highway, buildings such as mechanical upgrades or improvements, or physical structure enhancements or improvements. In 2021, the account was utilized for replacement of mechanical division equipment at the facility with a new 16,000-pound vehicle lift, tire machine, and balancer. Total project cost was $36,864 and will leave on an account balance of approximately $51,000. So adding this $20,000 to the account would round it out to $71,000.
Is there any discussion on Article 21? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Carr.
On the paper we got, it says 78,160 is the ending balance. Am I reading the wrong line?
I've got 36,864.
That's what I have.
Highway building improvements.
78,000.
78,160.
For the expense?
That was as of 12/31. Madam Moderator.
Oh, the account balance is approximately 51,000, is what I have.
Yeah, that's what I have too.
Mr. Wentworth says that that number is as of December 31st, correct, Mr. Wentworth?
Correct.
Mr. LaRochelle, what did you say?
You got 78,000. If you take the 78,000 that you're seeing in the capital reserve, I see that's what you're looking at is the capital reserve 2021 balances. But if you look at the rationale that the Highway Public Works Director provided, he was talking about that project cost being 36,864. If you subtract that out, the justification is that it's leaving an approximate balance after that of 51,000.
So the expense was 36,000.
Are you saying, is the current balance 78,160 is on this page?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
If you add the 36,864 to 51,000, if I'm reading this correctly, that's the $86,000 that he's looking at, correct?
I don't know where he's coming up with that.
Right here.
Capital reserve.
Capital reserve.
78, 160, 27. Okay, all right.
It's wrong here, but it's wrong there.
It's wrong in the book.
It's wrong in the book.
No, if you take
the 51,000.
We took that 36,000 away from the 78.
51,000.
But it's not 51 even, is it?
So
No,
are we
it's not.
clear that
It's not.
Article 19, the rationale is correct, Mr. LaRochelle?
I'm sorry?
Are we clear that the numbers
Yes.
on the rationale are correct?
Yes.
Okay. The numbers on that paper that you're looking at were incorrect, Mr. Carr.
Well, you're taking away your 30.
No.
No, he's correct.
He's correct, but if you take out the 36,000 from the number that he just read, we get the 51,000, correct?
It says you spent in '21, $19,040.
Laura?
Can I speak?
I guess it doesn't matter because people don't want to know how much is in these accounts. so.
The finance manager is going to answer this.
You need paper?
Nope, I have the paper.
Okay.
Mr. Carr, the total project cost that's being reported was $36,864. Not all of that came out of that capital reserve. That's the difference of what the board is reading. Because you're right, there was only $19,000 spent out of that because the Department of Public Works Director found other funds to fund some of that project.
Okay, but when I vote on this, and I guess I'm the only one that cares how much is in these accounts, but they didn't want my other amendment. It's 78,160 is now in the account.
Correct.
And we're adding to that.
As of 12/31.
Okay, I guess I'm the only one that cares because people don't care about how much is in these accounts.
Is there any other discussion for 21? Hearing none. I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 21. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. LaRochelle. All those in favor of restricting Article 21, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 21 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,000 to be added to the Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2007. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0 and the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell, who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. McDonald.
These funds will be added to the sidewalk capital reserve account for the reconstruction of existing and new sidewalks.
Is there any discussion for Article 22?
And I am Kelly Sullivan. I'm curious as to what we have in that fund currently.
Sidewalk capital reserve, 27,283.
27,283?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I interject there?
There's two. Yes.
There's two accounts there, Kelly. One is called the Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund, which has $20,424.
I am having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry, I had to share my mic.
Sidewalk capital reserve.
There's two capital reserves for the sidewalk. There's one that has $20,424, and there's one that's called the Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund Highway, which has $27,283. So I wanted to make sure that you know there's two accounts there. So if you look at this capital reserve, that you see there's two sidewalk accounts.
So Kelly Sullivan. So just on that clarification, so.
Can she speak up to the mic?
Kelly Sullivan. There you go. So there are two accounts for sidewalks, and I just want to clarify that both of those accounts can be used for sidewalks anywhere within the town.
One of the funds years ago was set up for the Bay sidewalk funds to be used in the Bay, and the other one was to be used anywhere in town, yes.
Okay. So the highway, the one that says highway fund is for the ones throughout the town?
The selectmen are working on this, and we were hoping to have it done this year, but with things that happened this fall, we were not. We were looking to combine both of these funds because there's no sense to have two sidewalk funds.
I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is how they get screwed up right there.
Lauren Cass, so what is the plan for $55,000? Where?
One of the plans being suggested right now is from Main Street all the way down, say, Village Store to the tip of the bay. That was done over back in 1990, if you remember, Lauren.
Yeah.
The other one, there's a discussion between the board. We have not become to an agreement yet down in the bay. The brick paver sidewalk, we've asked to have that redone and re-leveled with the red pavers because most of them are still good. But there's a lot of department heads and some selectmen want to tear it up and put stamped concrete in. So no final decision has been done yet at this point.
Thank you.
Hearing no more discussion, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 22. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Do I have a second? Mr. Mitchell? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 22, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 22 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be added to the Rock and Asphalt Crushing Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2017. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Recommended by the CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds the motion? Mr. Mitchell. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
Sorry, folks. I had my eyes dilated today. It's very hard to see, so that's why I'm holding this light above my rationale. The funds would be added to the capital reserve funds in the account, which has approximately $32,000, and would be used to crush highway department aggregates recycling stockpile, which is approximately 5,000 yards of material. The estimated cost is $60,000 to crush materials into reusable products for the department, which a lot of these products go back into a lot of our road reconstructions once we grind up the roads.
Is there any discussion on Article 23? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 23. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article number 23, please raise your cards. Opposed? Article 23 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 24, to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Highway Sand Shed Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2003. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Recommended by the CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. Who would like to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
These funds would be added into the Sand Shed Capital Reserve Fund, which currently has a balance of, and I have to read. No, it doesn't. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 95.99. I wanted to double check that before I read that in the records so we didn't have confusion again. After the construction of the new sand salt building, these funds were used for future construction and improvements to the sand building.
Is there any discussion on Article 24?
Lauren Cobb. So we spent $61,479 putting up this shed. Why are we putting another $10,000 if we finished the project? And we've got almost $10,000 in there now. Why do we need $20,000 in there?
Because if anything ever happened to the cover that's over the building now, which is called a hoop, if we had to replace that, that would be close to $25,000 to $30,000.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on Article 24? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 24. Mr. Wentworth, seconded by Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 24, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 24 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $151,900 for the purchasing an excavator for the Public Works Department. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of the article? Mr. La Rochelle.
This purchase would be to replace the current Cat 320 excavator, which is 15 years old, with 10,000 hours on it, and it is too large for road maintenance work. This would purchase a mid-size 26K size machine, which would be able to be safely moved with our current equipment and work well within the roads and roadways we have. We would look to replace this equipment every 7 to 10 years so we can maintain warranty coverage.
Is there any discussion on Article 25?
We just dumped all that money.
Yes.
My name is Kenneth Roberts. He just retired as highway agent for the town of Alton, and that excavator was bought in 2002. We did road reconstruction with it. What you just stated, that the highway department is no longer going to do road reconstruction. You're buying an excavator to do maintenance only. Is that the indication of what you've said? I guess that's a question. We're not doing road reconstruction anymore. And the last year that we did it, we built 4 miles of road under $1 million. And right now, estimated cost of a mile of road is $1.2 million if it's bid out. So you're saying we're no longer going to do road reconstruction and make that savings to the Alton taxpayers?
Did not really say that. It's not saying that it's maintenance and any work that needs to be done, and I'd like to see if Mr. Kidman would elaborate on that.
Great.
Sure.
Scott Kidman, Public Works Director. I'm a non-resident, so hopefully it's okay to speak.
Yes.
Just for clarification purposes, the new excavator would be utilized for doing road maintenance work and any reconstruction work that needed to be done within the town, so for rebuilding roads and anything that goes along with any road maintenance that we may end up doing for the course of the work that's been done, as has been done in the past. The new machine would be utilized for that. If we needed to have a machine that was any larger than what is being proposed, and we would rent that machine if needed, but it'd be on a case-by-case basis. This machine would be more versatile as far as its use for both purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidman.
Lauren Carr, there was quite a heated discussion about that we had just put a lot of money in repairing this machine, and now we're turning around and trading it in. Can you, Mr. LaRochelle, can you give me the numbers? Is this $151,900? The price of the new machine? How much are we getting for the old one? And I didn't get what's the size of the new one? What's the size of the new one?
26,000 pounds.
26,000.
What model number? If the other one's a 320, what's the new one?
I don't know what the new numbers are.
We don't know what the new model is going to get.
Do you know what the new model is, Mr. Kidman?
Because we don't have that information. Might as well sit down here for a minute.
So as everybody knows, these things go out to public bid, so we can't designate what type of a piece of equipment it will be, whether it be a Cat, John Deere, or whatever brand it may be. So we will put that out to bid. We did get preliminary estimates from many different vendors to come up with this number here, which is being proposed within the budget. And it did include, in fact, a trade-in of the existing piece of equipment. Those ranged anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 in trade-in value.
Okay, is the $50,000 trade-in, are you putting $50,000 and that comes up to the 151? So is it like 202,000 for this new machine?
You'll be in that range, depending on what the trade is. It'll be
so this is that number includes the trade-in.
Yes.
Okay. And the 320 is the Cat, so what would be the kind of the same size in the Cat?
So what's the pound difference between, say, the new vehicle or the new excavator and the one?
I'm sorry, this gentleman has the floor.
So as far as the size, it certainly is smaller in size, certainly from a 320. It would be along the size of a, I'm trying to give you an example, probably in the line of a 145, somewhere right around there. But as far as the weight difference there, I mean, you're going from a machine that's probably 48,000 pounds roughly, down to a 26,000 pound machine.
26?
Yes.
Okay.
The biggest thing is keeping the machine versatile so it can work within the roadway system itself and doesn't take up a large portion of the road doing actual ditch line maintenance and some of the drainage maintenance along the roadways that way, but still being able to have enough oomph and power to be able to do what we need to do with any of the closed drainage systems that have to be installed.
And do you know how this Rochelle, do you know how much they spent on the repairs? That night, there was quite a discussion about it. How much have we put into this just recently?
37,000 to 38,000.
37,000? And now we're going to get 50 to trade it in?
Well, that's an estimation.
That was over a year ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Mr. Carr, your time has just run out.
It's been a couple years.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 25. Mr. La Rochelle, seconded by Mr. Wentworth. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 25, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 25 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $127,600 for the purpose of purchasing a loader for the Public Works Department. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds it? Mr. La Rochelle. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
This purchase would be to replace the current CAT 938 loader, which is 6 years old with over 5,000 hours on it. The CIP plan is for replacement every 5 years to keep the equipment under warranty and increase the trade resale value, which will assist with future replacements and lower overall capital expense. The replacement of this cycle works well to minimize maintenance expenses such as tires, brakes, emission hours, maintenance items, which are very expensive.
Who cares to speak to Article 26? Any discussion?
Kelly Sullivan. Who voted against? It's 4-1.
Me.
And was that the same person that voted against on Article 25? I'm sorry, that's why I was here before.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 26. Mr. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 26, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 26 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be added to the IT Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2020. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, and recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion? Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. McDonald.
This is a, This capital reserve fund was established to fund the large-scale technology, hardware, and software needs and emergencies. This fund supports updating technology resources over time, thereby significantly reducing cyber security risk and any burden these large-scale projects would have on an annual budget. A one-time increase has been requested by the IT department and CIP collectively to cycle out some old equipment and get these systems current while requests in subsequent years will focus on remaining current and flattening out future budget projections.
Is there any discussion on Article 27? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 27. Mr. McDonald, seconded by Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration for Article 27, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 27 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $25,000 to be added to the Alton Bay Community Center Property Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2020. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle, who seconds it? Mr. Mitchell, who cares to speak in favor of it? Mr. La Rochelle.
Yep, I got it. The funds would be used for interior and exterior repairs such as painting, replace support beams, decking, boardwalk fencing, railing supports for underneath and building and of the boardwalk around. The siding, flooring, windows, kitchen, bathrooms, and upgrades, repairs to the septic system, electrical, plumbing, heating system when needed. The fund currently has a balance of $705.32. This is something that's badly needed. We got to take care of these historical buildings and maintain them and keep them in good shape for future generations.
Is there any discussion on Article 28?
Warren card, this, you spent $24,322 last year. What was done last year?
Roof. Chimney. Roof and a chimney.
Okay, now the boardwalk that goes from the beginning of that over to the Mount Washington dock, right?
Correct.
Okay, would that be covered under this reserve? Because it's not really the building, and that certainly needs to be fixed. That's not in good shape at all.
Only what's underneath the porches could be covered underneath this capital reserve. Anything outside of the building or the drip edge would have to be done through the budget process or in a line item to parks, buildings and grounds.
Oh. So the money we're going to raise is not going to do anything on the deck?
It's all around the boardwalk, meaning, like Ruben just said, around and under the roof area.
Under the roof area. Yeah. But now from the building over to the Mount Washington dock, that portion is, you won't be able to touch?
No. That would have to come out of the line item budget of the buildings and grounds.
Did you put some in for this?
I believe there is a piece in her budget for repairs of certain maintenance items on that, yes. And they did do some repairs last year, planking, if I remember correctly.
But there's no refurbishing the whole thing?
There's no capital reserve fund, but that could be used as part of the sidewalk because that is a sidewalk used by pedestrians.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on Article 28? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 28. Mr. La Rochelle, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration for Article 28, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 28 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 29. To see if the town will vote to establish a Jones Field Capital Reserve Fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of maintenance and improvements to the recreation area, park property, and parking lot, and to raise and appropriate the amount of $10,000 to be placed into this fund with the Board of Selectmen named as agents to expend from said fund. Majority vote is required, required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. Who would like to speak in favor of Article 29? Mr. McDonald.
This establishes a CRF for the upkeep and maintenance of Jones Field, the recreation area, park property, and parking lot property. The capital reserve funds will be used for improvements such as construction of new dugouts, maintenance of existing dugouts and buildings, security cameras, parking lot improvements, and repairs to the Green Monster, chain link fence, playground equipment, footbridge, and trail system and walking path, and field improvements.
Is there any discussion on Article 29? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 29. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 29, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 29 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 30, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,000 for the purpose of hiring a master plan consultant who specializes in municipal master plan guidance and who will work with the planning board and staff to assist with completing the master plan update that began in October of 2020. The special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:7(6) and will not lapse until the master plan consulting services are completed by December 31st, 2026, whichever is sooner. This sum is to come from the unassigned fund balance. No amounts to be raised from taxation. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Planning Board 6-0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. Who cares to speak in favor of the motion?
I do.
Mr. La Rochelle.
Madam Moderator, I'm going to move to amend Article number 30 to remove the Planning Board recommendation from the article, which was suggestion from legal counsel from RSA 659:44.
Motion has been made to remove the line that recommended by the planning board. Who seconds the amendment? Mr. Mitchell. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, well, all the...
Let him explain.
Huh? Yes, please.
Thank you. So I recommended that this language be taken out of this article, Article 30, and looking ahead to the future, also Article 31. It's in there as well. And the reason is that the RSA that was just cited prohibits election officers from doing what's called electioneering. And so out of concern that the recommendation by the planning board being in the warrant and on the ballot, I suggested that language be taken out. And the reason is that there is no legal authority for a recommendation of the planning board to be on an article of this type. And so to err on the side of caution and protect the town, I suggested it be removed.
Is there any discussion on the amendment to Article 30?
Madam? Yes. Okay. Did you want to reach? I was going to read the rationale.
Hi, Sue Stevens. Now that you're taking that wording out of these two coming up,
Is this going to happen henceforth for the future? Because since I've lived here for 8 years, almost every article has said that, and I think it sways the community vote that you guys recommend things and that they don't even bother doing their own research. And what about Budget Committee recommendation? Will that be removed as well?
So there's specific authority for budget committee recommendations, so that's fine to stay in.
Okay.
In terms of the town's past practice, I can't speak to that. I looked at this warrant and spotted this as a potential area of concern. It's weird, I can't see you, sorry.
It's okay. Well, thank you for doing that.
And so, it would be my recommendation that language that indicates the planning board recommends an article probably not be on future warrants or ballots. That doesn't mean that the recommendation made by the planning board can't be disseminated some other way to the voters. But I don't believe it should be on the warrant or on the ballot.
Yeah, I agree with you. Can I get your name? I didn't catch it.
Stephen Whitley.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you finally doing that.
You're welcome.
Should have been done a long time ago.
There's a little confusion there. It's on the ballot, they have to recommend budget.
Sydney Shapley. Can I just clarify with the town attorney that the planning board can recommend on planning board articles, not on money articles?
What do you mean by planning board articles? Can you give me an example?
Like the first, what are they?
Oh, the zoning ones, yeah,
Zoning,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah, and
So
again,
that is perfectly legal.
there's specific statutory authority for that.
Correct.
The problem is this is a money article, not a zoning amendment one, and so that's where you kind of get into a gray area.
Right, I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion with that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Does anyone not understand what the amendment is? Okay, well, we're going to, let's take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to Article 30, which takes out recommended by the planning board 6-0, please raise your cards. All those opposed? The amendment passes. Okay. Who would like, do you still need to speak to Article?
Yes.
30.
30. Article 30. The master plan consultant would provide assistance to the planning board to complete the master plan update that began in October of 2020. Up until now, the current consultant has shown the master plan committee how to proceed in identifying the demographics, engaging in the community and the master plan process, how to conduct surveys and larger results, identifying and creating appropriate chapters in the proposed master plan, and how to get people involved. The consultant has also shown the planning board how to represent the town in ways of participation for well-rounded results. The goal was to identify the appropriate demographics to assign the demographics into the master plan. The master plan is a flexible plan which evolves and changes year to year. The master plan portrays guidance on how to promote and control growth in the town in appropriate areas with appropriate means. The master plan forms the basis for all decisions made by the planning board, its committees, and its zoning board of adjustments.
Is there any discussion for Article 30?
Lauren Carr. In 2020, we raised $25,000, and that was going to lapse in 2024. So how much is left of that $25,000?
There isn't.
Pardon?
I'm going to refer back to, because let me look here. Hold on. I'm going to refer that to Jessica Call.
Who?
The town planner. The town planner. That money has been used. That's what I just said.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. This is my first time up here. So to speak to Lauren Carr's comment, the original warrant article was for $25,000, and that has been utilized.
Zero left?
That's
what that means?
Correct, zero left, which is why we were asking for an additional $9,000 to get through to completion and distribution of the updated master plan.
So the $25,000 go as a lump sum payment for this consultant? That where the money went?
That went to the consultant, yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
Over time, over the last year.
Over this past year, yes.
Oh. So, is this an additional, no, not request, but an additional project for her to do? Is that what this is? It's beyond what was the original schedule?
This is to take it to the end of, basically the end of the whole process and help through to the very end, where originally it was supposed to be for helping to guideline and bring it all through with the guidelines of helping the board and the committee to start the process.
Okay, so this is an add-on? This is an add-on after the 25 that we approved in 2020?
Yes.
Thank you.
Kelly Sullivan. I currently sit on the Master Plan Committee. We did a bid process. We brought in different personnel people. Ended up going with Tara Bamford, who is excellent. I've had the pleasure of working with her since the inception of this committee, and she has it's been pay-as-you-go, excellent rates for, I mean, we get so much bang for our buck with Tara, it's really unbelievable. I can't even say how pleased I am in working with her. Her knowledge keeps our meetings right on track, gives us our homework. We do meet at least monthly, sometimes more. There's a lot that goes into this master plan, and this additional funding is to just help us with the finished product of writing it. A master plan is huge. It encompasses everything within the town. So it is a long, large process, and she just helps us guide us to do the best job that we can do.
Thank you, Kelly.
No further discussion? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 30. Mr. La Rochelle, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 30, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 30 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 31, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purpose of hiring a planning and zoning consultant who specializes in municipal guidance and who will work with the planning board and board of selectmen and their staff to assist with crafting proposed zoning, zoning ordinances and regulations. This special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:7(6) and will not lapse until the planning and zoning consulting services are completed or by December 31st, 2026, whichever is sooner. This sum is to come from the unassigned fund balance. No amount is to be raised from taxation. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Planning Board 5-1, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. La Rochelle.
Madam Moderator, I once again move to amend Article number 31 to remove the Planning Board recommendation from this article from suggestion of legal counsel under RSA 659:44.
Thank you.
So we are basically doing the same thing that we did on Article 30, and we're removing that line recommended by the Planning Board. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment to Article 31, please raise your cards. All those opposed? The amendment to Article 31 passes. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Now, who speaks in favor of, did you still need to speak? Thank you, Mr. LaRochelle.
The planning and zoning consultant would provide assistance to the planning board and board of selectmen to update the town zoning ordinance to include a proposed zoning ordinance for short-term rentals and assist the selectmen with implementing the permitting process. The consultant would also provide assistance with crafting proposed ordinances with open space subdivisions and cabin cottage colonies. The aforementioned proposal zoning ordinances would be presented to the townspeople individually in warrant articles for their approval at the future town meetings.
Is there any discussion to Article 31?
Hi, Sue Stevens again. Who's going to be responsible for hiring this consultant?
Responsible for hiring, it would be under the planning department.
Okay, so they're going to basically hire their own boss?
No, it would have to go through the selectman process.
Okay.
But it would be consultant for the planning department, so I misspoke. It would be the selectman would.
Yeah, I just worry about someone being hired who either lives in town, who has some financial, considerations, or someone who's formerly been employed by the Alton government being hired for this position.
This is the same person as the consultant that's working
for the master plan? Okay, well that would be helpful.
Same consultant.
Okay, so that woman.
Consultant would be helping
Tara Bamford
to assist with the planning department.
Okay, thanks. And just one other question. I know you've removed planning board recommendation. Why is selectman recommendation remaining? They're elected also.
That's because there's statutory authority for them to have a recommendation when it involves a money.
Okay, thanks for explaining. Thank you.
Kelly Sullivan. So, Sue, Ms. Stevens segued. I'm speaking in favor to Article 31. I can say, since Mr. LaRochelle said that they were considering Tara Bamford, a consultant is not necessarily a boss. This is her job. She deals with zoning laws, master plans, and things of that nature on a daily basis, so it's in her wheelhouse. Committee members, board members, we're all basically volunteers. I do something else in my everyday life, and so doesn't everybody else for the most part. So when you have things that can be maybe confusing, it is excellent to bring in a consultant to just help you weed out and get to the good material, so to speak. I think the $5,000 budget for 31 is well worth it, and I would recommend it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 31. Mr. LaRochelle, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 31, please raise your cards. They're all done. Opposed? Article 31 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 32, to see if the town will vote to discontinue the transfer station equipment capital reserve fund created in 2007. Remaining funds of $12,205 are to be transferred to the municipality general fund. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Mitchell, who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth, who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
If Article 31 passes, this is to transfer $12,205 out of the unassigned fund balance into Solid Waste Center Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. This fund is used to buy equipment needed at the Solid Waste Center.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, am I on the wrong article?
You want 32?
Yes, you want 32.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. This article is to close this fund as it is a repeat of the previously established Solid Waste Equipment Fund. The remaining $12,205 would be transferred to the general fund.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
That's okay. I kind of got lost there. Is there any discussion for Article 32?
Yeah, me again. Hi, Sue Stevens again, just quickly. What's going on down, I mean, are we ever going to go back to full recycling again? And don't we want to keep this fund going, to keep the transfer station as up to date as possible for the future of the town?
We have two of these funds. This one's, we have to transfer the money to, out of the close this, we have to transfer the money to the general fund, and then the next article will transfer it back into the Solid Waste Center Equipment Fund.
Just my first part, though, are we ever going to go back to full recycling downtown again?
As soon as the prices come back, it costs us to recycle right now.
Right, I mean, have you ever looked at better bids to see if we could get with somebody, or maybe combine with other towns to do a co-op?
Well, we're getting away from what this article discusses.
Okay, no, it's just my opportunity to talk to somebody about recycling.
We're talking about the warrant.
Okay, well, it's about recycling, so, thank you anyway.
Is there any other discussion?
So we're going to call Warren Cat. So we're going to go from transfer station to solid waste center. Why? What's the deal between the wording? What does that accomplish? The same thing. You're doing the same thing. You're just calling one transfer station and the other one solid waste center.
So the money's in one account up there. We don't have two accounts, two separate accounts. So it puts it all in the same account for the Equipment Capital Reserve Fund up there.
So you discontinue that one and just throw it in.
Right. The next article, we'll put it back into it. There's two funds up there for the same thing.
Seeing no other discussion, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 32. Mr. La Rochelle, who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 32, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 32 is restricted regarding reconsideration.
Now I can read the right one.
Article 33, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $12,205 to be added into the Solid Waste Center Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Mitchell, who seconds it? Mr. Wentworth, who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
I'm going to speak on this one for the second time tonight. If Article 31 passes, this is to transfer the $12,205 out of the unassigned fund balance into the Solid Waste Center Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. This fund is used to buy equipment needed at the Solid Waste Center.
Is there any discussion on Article 33? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 33. Mr. Mitchell, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting Article number 33 for reconsideration, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 33 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 34. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 to be added to the landfill closure capital reserve fund as previously established in 1994. These funds are being used to deal with the contamination at the landfill and to meet the state regulatory requirements. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle, who speaks in favor of the... Mr. McDonald.
This fund is required to fund the unexpected expense associated with the presence of new contaminants at the landfill. Unexpected expenses may include but not limited to the following: testing, installation of additional monitoring wells, removal of monitoring wells, and the preparation of the annual report for the groundwater permit management as required by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Is there any discussion on Article 34?
Am I correct? You have $45,685 in there now? And we're going to add 1,000?
Yeah, that's what he figures he needs.
Thank you.
That's what they figure they need on it, in case something happens. They keep a certain amount in there to cover it.
Is there any other discussion on Article 34? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 34. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 34, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 34 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 35. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,000 to be added to the Town Hall Building Improvements Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2011. A majority vote is required. It's recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0, recommended by CIP. Who moves the motion? And Mr. Mitchell, who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle, who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Mitchell.
These funds will be added to the Capital Reserve Fund for future improvements to the Town Hall building, such as mechanical upgrades, interior improvements, or exterior enhancements or improvements. Right now, there is currently $47,457.27 in that account.
Is there any discussion on Article 35?
Virgil McDonald, I'm speaking as a citizen. That account was not started for interior work and everything else. That was for a sprinkler system for that building. And these accounts are getting all reworded somehow. That was started for a sprinkler system in that building.
Is there any other discussion?
I may, Mr. Moderator. Just a slight question. I understand we lost the boiler.
Please give us your name, Mr. Roberts.
Kenneth Roberts.
Thank you.
12 Clark Road. I understand we just lost the boiler in the town hall, and I understand parts are being ordered. to be repaired. The date of that boiler is quite old, and it's broken down many times on us. Is there any plans in the future of replacing that boiler in the town hall so they don't go through this of losing heat and losing the ramp?
Well, I was first sitting here tonight, I heard the boiler went down, Mr. Roberts. We were not notified by anybody. But if I remember, that boiler was put in by Mr. Quinley back in the 90s, and I think it probably does need replaced now because it's 30 years old.
And it's not the first time it's broken down, but there's been no plan in place by the selectmen with all the improvements to the town hall to replace that.
And nothing from the individual that was in charge of building grounds maintenance either.
And the boiler, we probably have to go through the Cleft Morrow Fund for the maintenance of the town hall fund.
Well, I don't disagree, I just thought.
If I may, just to clarify that, the boiler, it got looked at this morning, but it was not the boiler. It was the supply water line to the boiler, so the boiler was not affected.
Lauren Carr, I was on the board when that boiler was put in, the last boiler was put in. It wasn't Mr. Quinley. It started leaking, we had to replace it. I don't remember what year it was, but it certainly wasn't Mr. Quinley's boiler.
Well, when I was there, we replaced it. Mr. Quinley worked for the water department. We used the water department.
Yes, and that one leaked.
That was in the 90s.
Yes, and it was in the middle of the winter, and we had to hire a company to come in and, yeah.
It must have been one of the years I was off, didn't realize you were.
I don't think I've been off 20 years.
I think we're getting away from the article.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 35. Mr. McDonald, who will second that? Oh, you can't second your own motion. Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 35, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 35 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 36, Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2010. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion?
I do.
Mr. Mitchell. Who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
The Milfoil Committee would like to request $25,000 for the 2022 warrant article, 2021, $25,000. The $25,000 is conjunction with the existing 2021 balance will ensure that we have the funds available to anticipate the next summer, including herbicide treatments and dash work in the lake and in the Mirror-Meeting River. One of the tasks for next summer is to begin treatment above the dam in Mill Pond and Wentworth Pond areas which are relatively large and have not been previously treated. If anybody's not familiar with Wentworth Pond or Mills Pond, that is the one right next to 140 where the bridge goes over. That's considered Wentworth Pond. And Mills Pond is right across from the Alton Fire Department.
Is there any discussion on Article 36? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 36. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 36, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 36 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 37, to see if the town will vote to establish an environmental capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 with the purpose to assist any town department with unanticipated expenses concerning town properties needing work in order to be in compliance with DES and EPA regulations, or for the protection of the public health, welfare, and safety. The funds may be used for emergency repairs, such as drainage controls, contamination concerns, preventive measures, engineering, grant matching funds, grant application expenses, and other related items associated with natural water quality, such as contamination of wetlands, phosphorus and other nutrient pollutions, cyanobacteria and algae blooms, or septic system failures. Further, to raise and appropriate the amount of $20,000 to be placed into this fund and to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend. Majority vote is required. Recommendation by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who seconds it? Mr. LaRochelle. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. McDonald.
This fund is established, the capital reserve fund is established for a couple of reasons. One is for the unanticipated large expenses, such as stormwater, storm damage, septic system failures, environmental problems. The warrant article makes the funds available to the town departments that finds itself facing the environmental-related challenges. The article also allows the funds to be used for engineering work and grant application expenses related to environmental issues. Nature does not respect the budget cycle. The grants are always time-sensitive. When the opportunity presents itself, the funds will allow the town to move quickly to take advantage of the grants.
Is there any discussion on Article 37? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 37. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. LaRochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 37, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 37 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 38. Shall the town vote to rescind warrant article number 41, approved on March 11, 2008 ballot, because it does not allow for lawful meetings such as site visits and site walks used by many town boards in the regular conduct of their business, and further, to replace it with the following language that complies with existing New Hampshire law. Shall the town vote in order to promote openness in the conduct of public business that all town proceedings as defined by RSA 91-A, except in the event of an emergency circumstances, shall be open and accessible to the public at all times in accordance with RSA 91-A. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. Who moves this motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. Wentworth.
The purpose of this article is to adopt language that's consistent with Hampshire state law and will allow the town business to be conducted as needed while making it accessible to the public.
Is there any discussion on Article 38? Seeing none, not yet.
I'd like to amend the article to read, shall the town vote to rescind warrant Article 41 approved on March 11th, 2008 ballot because it does not allow for lawful meetings such as site visits, site walks used by many town boards in the regular conduct of their business, and further to replace it with the following language that complies with existing New Hampshire laws. Shall the town vote in order to promote openness in the conduct of public business that all town proceedings are defined in RSA 91-A, except for site visits and site walks and the event event of an emergency circumstances shall be open and accessible to the public at all times in accordance with RA 91, and shall be held in Alton-owned public facilities.
Thank you. It makes it confusing.
My read of it, I don't think that's because they're conflicted with my plan. Because you're going to have cycles that are not going to be
In town.
Right. They also don't hold a hearing meeting and it's not in the town facility. And I don't think that a meeting can dictate to the various bodies where they can hold meetings. As long as they comply with 91A.
Okay, this, yep, that would be fine. Give my mouth a rest.
So my conversation with the moderator was just that I don't think that's a permissible amendment. And it's because 91A has a number of requirements, as I'm sure you know, and people in the audience know, about public meetings. None of those requirements dictate that you can only hold public meetings on any town-owned facilities. And so I don't believe that this meeting can require public bodies to limit them in such a way when 91A gives them more latitude when they want to hold public meetings. So I think that maybe a more succinct way to say it is the amendment would limit where town bodies could hold public meetings beyond what is allowable by state statute. And because of that, I don't think this body, the annual meeting, has the power to do that.
Well, when we're rescinding, it was worded just like that.
Yes.
And so our previous attorney thought it was be able to be enforced. And then they said, except for the site visits. So I'm addressing that question, and that's a concern about that article.
Yep. No.
So I don't know, what was it, 2011? We've had this since 2011, and our previous attorney thought it was okay, except when the selectman came up and said, well, it doesn't have the sidewalk and the other issue part of it.
And I don't know what led to him making that conclusion. I reach a different one. And I can't speak to what that prior advice was, because I wasn't part of it.
Right.
So, I'm left with this article as it's been drafted, and then your amendment as it's been presented. And that's my guidance based on those two things.
Okay, but I can still put that article in, and it can be second, and we can't vote on it, because there's no such thing as an illegal motion, correct?
No, I disagree. I think there are motions that can be made that are not permissible by the moderator.
This is kind of changing the subject. Because the subject is
to rescind.
Yeah. It's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. Yeah, in 10 hours. We're going to take a 5-minute recess here. Make it a quick 5 minutes, and we're going to powwow here. Seconds? What time are we at?
I can't sleep. It's 3 o'clock. So I will say it is. Oh, yeah. It's cold. That was I remember we were allocating like 5,000. Oh, I did say that. The estimated cost was
Well, it came down to 120.
probably gone up. But
Okay, we're still on the amendment to Article 38. Mr. Carr, and shall be held in Alton-owned public facilities. That goes against RSA 91-A, so it's really an illegal motion. I can't put that in.
You're saying if we pass this, it will be an illegal motion?
If I'm not allowing this to go in as an amendment.
Thank you.
Do you want to keep the first change?
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. I sent some information. Remember last year we had the issue about the reports and committees and everything else, and then that one, it said from the Missile Association, there's no such thing as illegal motions passed at the meetings, but if you say it is, we'll find that out later.
Am I correct? It goes against the RSA. It's contradicting it. What is law? Is there any other discussion for Article 38?
Can I get my paper back?
Oh, if you want. Sorry, make you reach again. Seeing no other discussion for Article 38, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 38. Who would like to make a motion? Mr. Wentworth, who seconds it? Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 38, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 38 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 39, to see if the town will vote to require that the annual budget and all special warrant articles having a tax impact as determined by the governing body shall contain a notation stating the estimated tax impact of the article. The determination of the estimated tax impact shall be subject to approval by the governing body. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the budget 4-0. Who speaks in favor of the article? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of the article? Mr. Wentworth?
This article will require the individual estimate tax impact for all future monetary warrant articles will include is included in the proposed budget.
Is there any discussion for Article 39? Seeing none, I will take a motion to reserve reconsideration of Article 39. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 39, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 39 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 40, New Hampshire Lakes Lake Host Program. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 for the purpose of supporting New Hampshire Lakes Lake Host Program, which is a program with a mission to keep New Hampshire lakes clean and healthy now and in the future. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who speaks in favor of the motion? Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth, who speaks in favor? Mr. McDonald.
This money will be used to establish a lake host program in Alton that will help inspect watercraft entering our public ramps that may contain invasive plant species.
Is there any discussion for Article 40? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 40. Mr. Wentworth, who seconds that? Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 40, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 40 is restricted from reconsideration. Article 41, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,000 for the purpose of supporting the Alton Community Services, which provides a food pantry and assistance programs for fuel, prescriptions, utilities, and housing in close coordination with the Alton Welfare Department. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds it? Mr. McDonald. Who speaks in favor of the motion?
I believe somebody from the Community Services is here to speak in favor of the amendment.
Everybody's taller than me, so I have to pull this down. Peter Bolster. I'm presently the president of Alton Community Services. This organization began 23 years ago, a few months after I arrived in town, and has made a big difference in the life of people in town. And one of the things that's special about it is that Alton Community Services works together with all the different agencies, the churches, the American Legion, schools, all the different groups, the welfare department, in trying to have a one-stop shopping place for people who need help, working together with the welfare department. And we've been very successful in doing that. There's been 75 families that we service this last year, and 22,000 meals were provided. The money that basically supports our program, first of all, not a single person on the Alton Community Services organization receives a single penny, a single candy bar, or anything for the work that they do with Alton Community Services. We are truly a non-profit without any employees. However, it would be impossible for us to operate without Chris Racine, who's sitting back there, who is our executive director, who's made a tremendous contribution, particularly in these last couple of years with the issue of with the pandemic, and keeping open and having food available for people that have need. And we're able to supply a very plenteous amount of food to people because most of our food comes from either the United States Department of Agriculture, it comes from Hannaford's Fresh Rescue Program, which is incredible, the amount of food we get from them. Without that food, we would be not able to provide provide probably 50% of the food that we provide. It's also a lot of donations from the community in general, and we really appreciate the amount that the town gives us each year to basically to pay the rent for the facility that we have just next door to Biscuit and Bun, I think it's called, or
Soup and a Bowl.
Soup and a Bowl, or Bowl and Bun, I guess it is. Okay. And so we just want to thank everybody for supporting this program over the years. We have a lot of volunteers. A lot of you have helped out in many different ways over the years, and we very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion on Article 41? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for 41. Mr. Wentworth? Who will second that? Mr. La Rochelle? All those in favor of restricting reconsideration for Article 41, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 41 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 42, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,000 for the purpose of supporting the American Red Cross, which provides disaster relief, shelters, basic household necessities, and counseling. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1, recommended by the Budget Committee, none. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald, who seconds it? Mr. Mitchell, is anyone want to speak to this article? Okay, I'd like to stand corrected. I have Budget Committee 4-0 on Article 42. I don't have it on here. Is there any discussion on Article 42? This would be the American Red Cross nonprofit. Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 42. Mr. McDonald, seconded by Mr. Wentworth. All those in favor, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 42 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 43, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of supporting the Community Action Program, which provides supplemental food, fuel, utility, transportation, Meals on Wheels, weatherization assistance, and Women's, Infants, and Children's Food Assistance Program, WIC. This is a special warrant article. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. Is there someone to speak for Article 43? Seeing no one, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 43. That's Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration for Article 43, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 43 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 44. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of supporting caregivers of Southern Carroll County and Vicinity Incorporated, includes Alton, which provides free transportation to handicapped, elderly, and other residents needing assistance with all these services provided by volunteers. This is a special warrant article. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. Is there anyone to speak in favor of Article 44? Is there any discussion on 44? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 44. Mr. La Rochelle, who will second that? Mr. Mitchell? Thank you. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 44, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 44 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 45, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 for the purpose of supporting CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, which provides advocacy for abused and neglected children. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. Is there someone to speak in favor of Article 45? Is there any discussion on Article 45? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration. Mr. Wentworth, who will second that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of can't say it. Restricting reconsideration of Article 45, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 45 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 46, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,000 for the purpose of supporting the Central New Hampshire VNA and Hospice, which is a nonprofit agency that provides health care, hospice care, and maternal child health services. This is a special warrant article. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1. Recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. Is there anyone to speak in favor of the article? Is there any discussion on the article?
Kelly Sullivan. It says recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1, so I was wondering who abstained or who voted against.
With me. I believe it's Virgil who raises.
I'll take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 46. Mr. La Rochelle, who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 46, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 46 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 47, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,750 for the purpose of supporting Lakes Region Mental Health Center, which provides mental health care to area residents, services for children, elders, along with other emergency services. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1. Recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who seconds it? Mr. Mitchell. Who speaks in favor of Article 47? Is there any discussion for 47?
Here he comes. Don't jump.
Just thought of something. How much did they spend in Alton last year? Do you have that information? On any of these committee, on any of these groups?
Petition.
Are we doing life ministries?
No, we're doing Lakes Region Mental Health.
Okay.
Oh, let's not spend the time. Thank you.
We have the information for you if you want it.
Do you want it? Yeah.
Waiting patiently.
Good evening, Ann Nichols. I'm a non-resident of Alton. I'm the Director of Public Relations, Lakes Region Mental Health Center.
Very good.
Our funding support, which is a level funded request, is for the provision of emergency services for Alton residents. We provide emergency 24/7 care to the residents of the 24 towns that we serve, including Alton, regardless of someone's ability to pay. And for the record, I want you to be aware that in our fiscal year 21, we served 114 residents of Alton, and 24 of those individuals utilized our emergency services program. We also provided charity care in the amount of $16,224 to Alton residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She had better information than I did.
Yeah, this breakout is right here.
Kelly Sullivan, so again, just wondering who voted against?
I don't have the record in front of us to tell you who that was, Kelly. Wasn't me, though.
That was me.
Is there any other discussion for, we're on 47, correct?
47.
Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 47. Mr. Wentworth, seconded by Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 47, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those opposed? Article 47 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 48, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of supporting Life Ministries Incorporated, which is a not-for-profit charity that provides food and staples to Alton residents. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. Wentworth. Who seconds it? Mr. La Rochelle. Is there someone here to speak to Article 48? Would anyone like to discuss Article 48? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 48. Mr. Wentworth, seconded by Mr. La Rochelle. Article 48 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 49, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,575 for the purpose of supporting New Beginnings, which provides 24-hour crisis support for domestic sexual assault victims, operates a shelter, and provides counseling. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. McDonald. Who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. Is there anyone to speak to Article 49? Would anyone like to discuss 49? Seeing no one, I would take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 49. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm backwards. Mr. McDonald, who seconds that? Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of reconstructing reconsideration of Article 49, please raise your cards. Thank you. All opposed? Article 49 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 50, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of supporting Waypoint, formerly known as Child and Family Services of New Hampshire. This is a special warrant article. A majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Who moves the motion? Mr. La Rochelle. Who seconds that? Mr. Wentworth. Is there someone to speak to Article 50? Is there any discussion on Article 50? Seeing none, I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 50. Mr. La Rochelle, seconded by Mr. Wentworth. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 50, please raise your cards. Opposed? Article 50 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 51, reports of committees. To hear reports of any committees, boards, trustees, commissions, officials, agents, or concerned voters, and vote to accept the same. Furthermore, to conduct any other business that may legally come before said meeting.
We need to.
Do we have? Yeah.
Should have been the last article.
This is going to go on the ballot as is, so. Okay. Okay.
I think it was the last selectmen's meeting, a group came, maybe it was the one before, a group came in talking about a firehouse, a new fire station. And the selectmen kind of passed it on. And one of the numbers mentioned was $20 million. And then these people were on the CIP committee, and then it came on the YouTube, and it was kind of not really directed. So I guess I have a concern. I really think the selectmen, if you are going to talk about $20 million firehouse or public, whatever you want to call it, public thing, I think the selectmen should really take the reins of that and not, and set up what you want, what the goals are, who you want on the committee, etc. I mean, this group decided who's going to be on the chair, who's going to be the chair, and who's going to be the vice chair, and who they were going to have it on everything else. I think it really should be the selectmen that do that. Maybe two of you should get on that, a group, committee, and drive that and make sure what we need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think you're letting it too loose from what I saw on that committee, that CIP committee, or subcommittee of the subcommittee of the subcommittee of the CIP. So that's my concern. I wish if you're going to do this, let's have a direction. Let's study it, what we need, before we start putting $20 million in. Thank you.
Kelly Sullivan. I was also at that meeting. It was the CIP meeting. The public was invited to attend. It was also recorded, so you can find it on YouTube. There was talk about facilities. That's been a large talk in town this year because of aging and things like that, and trying to plan for the future, which is what the CIP committee's primary goal is, budgeting. I'm sure everybody kind of got that at this point.
We're talking about reports to hear reports.
Yep. But because Mr. Carr brought it up and out to the public, I just wanted to clarify his point. The selectmen asked the CIP committee what they thought about it because it is a large number, and so when the CIP committee met, I went as a citizen of the town and listened to what they said, and they were considering a committee for a facilities committee, so then they could look into that, and it was recommended that the Board of Selectmen would oversee that. So just to give some clarification to what has been going on and things that were brought up, and nobody's looking to drop 20 mil tomorrow.
Should I do a restriction? This is stupid.
It'll be Friday.
Patrick O'Brien again on behalf of the volunteer CIP group that meets and discusses the assets of the town of Alton.
Madam Moderator, point of order. This has not gone to the ballot. We're not here to hear reports and everything. It hasn't gone even to the ballot yet.
He's correct.
Okay, if I'm not allowed to speak, that's fine, just tell me. That's
Already listened to.
We're speaking to the warrant, which is to hear, which is going to go on the ballot.
Could you explain to me what the definition, or what the purpose of this article is?
So at the end of the meetings, we hear any concerns, but this hasn't gone to ballot yet.
Then I would respectfully ask that Mr. Carr was shut down right away instead of waiting to go on with his point that had nothing to do with this article, because that is the point that now everybody is fired up
I'm going to
about.
stop all of this right now. This is ended. I'm sorry, Ms. Cott, this is ended. This is not open for discussion. It's just going on to the warrant article.
I agree.
This is not
I agree.
where...
I absolutely agree with you. You're 100% right. I voiced my concerns. I don't know why they think we're going to get in a back and forth. I actually...
Well, we shouldn't, this is not the place for it. With that, I'll take a
Madam
motion.
Chairman, Madam Moderator, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
It was passed last year on the warrant article, though, so it's not, so this was passed last year.
So we can hear reports today.
According to the ballot last year, right here from the finance
Will
officer.
the gentleman...
Pat, come on up. I didn't think it was on ballot last year.
Does anyone have a report that they would like to give? I believe the gentleman from the CIP, who I abruptly cut off, I would like to hear.
Because we passed it last year.
I'll be happy to hear your report, sir.
Yeah, but it's already passed. At the end of the day.
I was wrong.
I just wanted to mention on behalf of CIP, because our chairman is not here tonight, that one of the main focuses of this group this year was buildings, and the fact that building replacement is not accounted for anywhere in the community right now. So much like the vehicles and equipment that have taken a very heavy hit on the taxes in the last 5 or 6 years, it's because we were not saving for it prior to that. So this is an attempt to get into looking at buildings and all of the town buildings that we are currently not budgeting for replacement for. So this group in this proposal was not for a fire station or a single individual. This is an all-encompassing committee that will look at all town buildings over their current age and their anticipated lifespan to develop a plan to replace them on a reasonable schedule. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will take a motion to restrict...
Well, I think Cindy wants to talk. Oh.
Did you? No. Reconsideration for Article 51. Mr. Wentworth, seconded by Mr. McDonald. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 51? All those opposed? Article 51 is restricted regarding reconsideration. Article 52, shall the following provisions pertaining to elections be adopted? All voting shall be by paper ballot, and all ballots shall be hand counted only, rather than by use of optical scanning or any other types of programmable electronic counting devices. This is a petition article. Who moves this article?
It's a petition.
Yeah, it's a petition. Yeah. Who would like to speak to the article?
It doesn't
Doesn't need to be moved, it's a petitioned article.
For it. Oh.
Would you like to speak?
Against it, I'm sorry.
No, for or against? I'm listening to both. Against or for? If you have something to say, I'd like to hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was having trouble understanding what you were saying.
Oh, I'm tired. Nobody's understanding me.
Anyway, here's what warrant Article 52 should have said. If the voters of Alton will thank all of the election officials and all of the volunteers who have worked tirelessly and diligently on every election to keep our elections accurate and fair. Unfortunately, that's not how it's worded. This is a warrant article creating a solution to a non-existent problem. There is zero evidence of any problems with Alton elections. I gather from wiser heads who are present that I'm not allowed to speak to the petition signers, and I can only, is that correct, Ms. Moderator?
You may only speak to the warrant.
The content of
why you're for it or why you're against it.
Okay. Well, as I said, there's no evidence of problems with Alton elections. Our election officials, and many or most of you up on the podium are very well aware of this, and are election officials. Our election officials now work 15 to 18 hours a day every election. If every ballot had to be hand counted, that figure would be doubled or tripled maybe. It would be the equivalent of having every single ballot measure, every candidate selection, like a recount. And we know that recounts are very labor-intensive and very time-consuming. It's hard to believe that anyone familiar with what goes on and what has gone on with elections in Alton could ever consider a warrant article like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sydney Shapley, I'd like to amend the article.
Yes.
To read, all voting shall be by paper ballot and all ballots may be counted by electronic counting devices.
I don't know if that's valid. Let's check it out.
Want to change it?
All voting shall... Change it, right?
I didn't think so.
No, I think the question is, it's more than a lot of money. I asked him that during the break. Was it? I asked him that during the break.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You did our homework. We should have known that.
Oh, yeah, I agree. No, I thought that was what the question was.
This can be amended. So, we're requesting that the change will be, all voting shall be by paper ballot, and all ballots shall be, may be counted by electronic counting devices only. They want
Not
to...
only. I don't have only on there.
Oh, words, sorry.
They can be
So
counted.
you're removing, and all ballots shall be hand counted only, rather than optical scanning or any other type of a programmable electronic counting device.
Correct. That we are allowed to use an electronic device to count the votes.
Right. So this is legal. Okay. Okay.
Well, the governing body.
We, if I can speak to my amendment?
Yes, you may. Oh, yes. I need a second for the amendment. And your name, sir? Oh, John, I'm sorry. The old eyes there. Okay, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes. On top of what Ruth has already said, I think that the current laws provide ample opportunity for a contested ballot to be hand counted. I've been part of that process. I know that human error
can occur far more readily on that than what has ever been proven on a machine. I think that's something people are not taking into consideration, and people have the opportunity to come in and watch those ballots be counted through the machines. I think this is an unnecessary and unfunded article.
Would you like to speak?
That won't work because we have write-ins, and they get hand counted.
It does work. It says may be
You're
counted.
saying run it through the machine.
Not
It will
no.
reject it, then they have to be hand counted.
Yeah, and she's saying
That won't fix the problem.
She's saying you can hand count and use the machine.
Correct.
She just-
All ballots
I thought she
may
just
be
read-
counted by electronic
Not shall,
devices.
may. Not
May.
shall, may.
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 May be counted by
Not-
electronic.
I may have read that wrong.
Okay.
The article is written and amended. Can you read what she wrote?
Yes, I can. I'm going to read the whole article. Shall the following provisions pertaining to elections be adopted? All voting shall be by paper ballot, and all ballots may be counted by electronic counting devices.
Hey, okay.
If we feel that will be confusing, I'm happy to also add or hand counted when necessary.
Okay, that sounds good.
Would you like that on there?
You won't, I will.
I'll second it.
Sorry.
We'll all second it.
Kelly Sullivan, and I am just backing up what Sydney said. I think Alton has a very reputable reputation for election in our process, and unless given cause to think otherwise, would never have a problem with our people that run the polls in Alton. So I think this, as presented, Article 52 it's unfounded and unnecessary.
We get a second on that?
Me?
Yeah.
Numerous.
Yes, we did. Mr. Markland did it.
John Markland, having run for a public office in this town and having recounts done on my election, I think I lost by 11 votes. The lovely ladies up there did their due diligence and did the recount, and I was witness to it. By God, the machine worked perfect. The numbers were the right numbers. The difference was the right numbers, and thank God I lost, is all I can say. So, stay with it. Lovely job you people are doing. Thank you.
The only thing I want to add, Sue Stevens, is that I would think that everybody would be concerned about their privacy and that you would want your vote to be secret. And with these scanning machines, you have a better chance of that than one of your fellow citizens or neighbors possibly seeing how you voted and then holding that against you and perhaps bullying you or, holding a grudge against you for some reason. I like my privacy in certain areas of my life, and this is one of them. And so I support using machines over hand counting. So I support the change she made to this. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read the amendment one more time so we're all clear. I'm going to read the whole thing. How's that? Shall the following provisions pertaining to elections be adopted? All voting shall be by paper ballot, and all ballots may be counted by electronic counting devices or hand counted only if necessary. Okay? Now, would anybody else like to discuss this amendment?
I'd like to speak to the bill, but not to the amendment, or to the...
Okay, very good. So, let's say, everyone understands it, we've discussed it. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your cards. All those opposed? The amendment has passed. Okay. to you all then. Okay, now we're going back to the article as amended. Is there any discussion on that?
My name is Brian Beal. I live on Sunset Shore Drive. I'm also Deputy Director of Open Democracy and Open Democracy Action. I work on voting issues in New Hampshire, all over the state. The AccuVote system has been proven to be a very reliable system over many years of use. The systems are very old in New Hampshire, as you are probably aware, but the recent audit in Windham, the auditor, Harry Hursty, did say that these are machines that are not likely to be hacked because they don't get plugged into the internet, and they have proven over the years to be very reliable. I'd like to say also a thanks to our hardworking election officials, because I know how hard it is, even if you don't have to do hand counting, and hand counting is an extremely laborious process. So I would urge the approval of the article as amended. I would oppose the original article, and I think it would be in the best interest of Alton to oppose that original one and go with the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I will...
Adjourn.
We have to take a vote on this. Okay, all those in favor of Article 52 as amended, please raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 52 is passed with the amendment.
Motion to adjourn.
I have to do a restrict, yes. I would like to do, I don't get too excited. I will take a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 52. Mr. McDonald. Mr. Mitchell. Article 52 is restricted. I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Mitchell, who would second that? Mr. La Rochelle. All those in favor? All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. It was a good debate.